The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline spires of Zephyria Prime as Queen Valestra stood on her palace balcony, her 6 arms folded in contemplation. The Zephyrian homeworld had seen peace for over 3 centuries, but recent reports from the outer colonies troubled her deeply. Strange vessels had been spotted at the edge of their territory, ships unlike anything in their databases. Princess Lyralii moved through the royal gardens with practiced grace, her translucent wings catching the light as she tended to the exotic blooms that only grew in Zephyria's unique atmosphere. At 25 cycles old, she was considered young by Zephyrian standards, but her intelligence and diplomatic skills had already earned respect throughout the kingdom. Her mother expected her to choose a mate soon from among the noble houses, but Lyralii had shown little interest in the suitors presented to her. The princess paused beside a cluster of singing flowers, their melodic hums filling the air with harmony. Something felt different today, a subtle vibration in the atmosphere that her sensitive antennae detected. She looked toward the eastern sky and saw it, a small craft descending through the clouds, clearly damaged and trailing smoke. Without hesitation, Lyralii spread her wings and took flight, her natural curiosity overriding any sense of caution. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. Angular where Zephyrian vessels were curved, made of strange metals that gleamed dully in the sunlight. It crashed in a clearing just beyond the palace gardens, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. When Lyralii reached the crash site, she found the vessel's hull split open. Inside, strapped to a primitive control seat, was a creature she had never encountered before. It was tall and lean with only 2 arms and 2 legs, and its skin was a warm brown color. Most shocking of all, it had no wings, no extra limbs, no visible adaptations for advanced civilization. Yet somehow, this being had traveled between the stars. The creature stirred as she approached, and their eyes met. Where she expected to see the compound eyes common to most spacefaring species, she found simple, brown orbs that seemed to hold impossible depth. The being spoke in a language she didn't recognize, but there was something in its tone, gratitude perhaps, and a wariness born of experience rather than fear. "Can you understand me?" Lyralii asked in Galactic Standard, the common tongue used for trade and diplomacy. The being's face showed recognition, and it nodded slowly. "Yes," it replied, its voice rough but clear. "Thank you for coming. I'm Marcus Chun, from Earth. My ship's navigation system failed during a hyperspace jump. Earth." Lyralii had never heard of such a world, and she knew the star charts better than most. "You're far from any registered system," she said, extending one of her 4 hands to help him from the wreckage. "How did you come to be here?" Marcus accepted her help, wincing as he stood. "Long story. My people are explorers. We're not officially part of the Galactic Alliance yet, still finding our way among the stars." As they spoke, Palace Guard arrived, their energy weapons trained on the strange being. Lyralii stepped between them, and Marcus, her wings spread in a protective gesture. "Stand down," she commanded. "This being is under my protection." Captain Theron, her personal guard, looked uncertain. "Princess, we know nothing about this creature. It could be dangerous." Lyralii studied Marcus more closely. Despite his alien appearance, she sensed no malice from him. If anything, he seemed more concerned about her safety than his own. "He's injured and far from home. We will offer sanctuary according to Zephyrian law." Over the following days, Marcus recovered in the palace medical wing, while Lyralii visited him regularly. She was fascinated by his stories of Earth, a world where beings like him had risen to sapience without the natural advantages that most species took for granted. No wings for flight, no extra limbs for manipulation, no natural armor or weapons. Yet somehow, these humans had not only survived but thrived. "How is that possible?" she asked during one of their conversations. "Your people seem so vulnerable." Marcus smiled, an expression that Lyralii found oddly appealing. "We make up for what we lack in natural gifts with determination, creativity, and the ability to work together. Humans have always been good at adapting to challenges. He told her about Earth's history, the struggles, the conflicts, but also the moments of incredible cooperation and achievement. He spoke of art and music, of scientific discoveries made by individuals who refused to accept limitations. Most surprisingly, he told her about love, not just the biological drive to reproduce that motivated most species, but a deeper connection between individuals that transcended logic. Lyralii found herself drawn to these concepts, and to Marcus himself. There was something about his perspective that challenged everything she thought she knew about strength and civilization. When he looked at her, she didn't see the calculating gaze of a suitor evaluating her political value. Instead, she saw genuine interest in who she was as an individual. As Marcus's ship was being repaired by the palace engineers, Queen Valestra summoned her daughter for a private audience. "I understand you've been spending considerable time with the alien," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "His name is Marcus, Mother. And yes, I find his culture fascinating. Fascinating enough to neglect your duties? The Council of Nobles grows impatient for your betrothal announcement." Lyralii felt a surge of frustration. "Perhaps I'm not ready to bind myself to someone who sees me only as a political alliance." Queen Valestra's antennae twitched with concern. "Daughter, I hope you're not developing inappropriate feelings for this creature. He's not even of our species. And what if I am?" The words escaped before Lyralii could stop them, surprising them both. The queen was quiet for a long moment. Such unions are not forbidden by law, but they are unprecedented. The council would never accept it, and the people might see it as a betrayal of our traditions. That evening, Lyralii walked with Marcus through the gardens under the light of Zephyria's 3 moons. His ship would be ready soon, and he would need to continue his journey to rejoin his people. The thought filled her with an emptiness she had never experienced before. "I've been thinking about what you told me," she said, "about human bonds of affection." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. "Lyralii, I think I'm beginning to understand it," she continued. "This feeling that makes me want to be near you, to share your thoughts and experiences. Is this what humans call love?" The question hung in the air between them, fraught with implications that could change both their lives forever. Marcus reached out and gently took one of her hands in both of his. "I think it might be," he said softly. "And if it is, then I'm feeling it too." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Captain Theron, who approached with obvious urgency. "Princess, forgive the intrusion, but there's been a development. Long-range sensors have detected a fleet approaching our system. The configurations match reports from our outer colonies, ships similar to this human's vessel." Lyralii felt a chill of anticipation mixed with dread. Marcus's people were coming, which could mean his rescue, or the beginning of something much larger. As they hurried back to the palace to meet with Queen Valestra and the military council, she realized that whatever happened next would determine not just her own future, but possibly the fate of both their civilizations. The peaceful isolation of Zephyria was about to end, and the choices made in the coming days would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The war room in the depths of Zephyria's royal palace had not been used for active military planning in over 2 centuries. Ancient tactical displays flickered to life as Queen Valestra studied the approaching fleet with her senior commanders. The holographic projections showed 37 vessels of unknown design, maintaining a steady course towards Zephyria Prime. "Their technology is primitive by our standards," Admiral Korath reported, his multiple eyes scanning the tactical data. "Basic fusion drives, simple energy weapons, and hull designs that suggest they're still using traditional materials rather than crystalline composites. A single one of our destroyers could eliminate their entire fleet." Marcus stood at the edge of the gathering, his jaw tight with tension. Lyralii could see the conflict in his expression, loyalty to his own species warring with concern for the world that had given him sanctuary. "Admiral, with respect, you're underestimating them," he said quietly. The Admiral's antennae bristled with irritation. Creature, your people may seem impressive to you, but we have been spacefaring for over 10 millennia. We have faced the Krenari Empire, the Silicon Collective, and the Void Stalkers. What could your primitive species possibly? They call themselves the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying an edge that made several officers reach for their weapons. And they didn't come here looking for a fight. They came looking for me. Queen Valestra raised a hand for silence. The tactical display showed the human fleet slowing as it entered the outer system, their formation shifting from an aggressive wedge to something more resembling a search pattern. Explain, she commanded. When my navigation failed, I transmitted a distress signal. Standard protocol for lost human vessels is to send a rescue fleet, no matter the cost or distance involved. They won't leave without me, Your Majesty. But if they think I'm being held against my will. The implications hung heavy in the air. Lyralii watched her mother's expression harden as she processed the situation. The Zephyrians had superior technology and defensive positions, but they were a peaceful people who had not fought a real war in centuries. The humans, from what Marcus had told her, were quite different. Open a communication channel, the Queen ordered. We'll attempt diplomatic contact. The main display shifted to show the exterior view from the palace's highest tower. In the distance, points of light were becoming visible as the human fleet approached. The communication officer, a young Zephyrian with nervous energy crackling around his antennae, worked to establish contact. I have them, Your Majesty, he reported. Audio only. The voice that came through the speakers was harsh and mechanical, translated by the universal communicators. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We are conducting a search and rescue operation for one of our people. We request permission to scan your system for our missing vessel. Marcus stepped forward, and Lyralii saw recognition flicker across his features. That's my sister, he whispered. Queen Valestra looked at him sharply, then activated the communication system. Admiral Chun, this is Queen Valestra of the Zephyrian Kingdom. Your pilot is safe and has been our guest while his vessel was repaired. There was a long pause before the response came. Your Majesty, we appreciate your hospitality. We request immediate permission to retrieve our citizen and depart your space. Permission granted. You may send a single shuttle to our coordinates. Negative. Admiral's privilege requires a full escort and security detail. We'll be sending 3 ships to your surface. The Zephyrian officers exchanged glances. Admiral Korath leaned close to the Queen. Your Majesty, standard protocol would be to allow only 1 unarmed diplomatic vessel. This demand is aggressive. Marcus spoke up again. Your Majesty, my sister isn't being aggressive. She's being protective. Humans have encountered species before who use hospitality as a cover for hostage-taking. She won't risk leaving me in a potentially dangerous situation. Lyralii watched the interaction with growing understanding. Everything she had learned about humans over the past days suggested they valued their individual members far more than most galactic species. To them, Marcus wasn't just another citizen. He was irreplaceable. Very well, Queen Valestra said finally. 3 ships, but they will be escorted by our own forces and must follow our approach vectors exactly. Understood. Admiral Chinout. As the communication ended, the Queen turned to Marcus. You will meet with your people and arrange your departure. I trust this will resolve the situation peacefully. But Lyralii saw something in Marcus's expression that suggested the situation was far more complicated than her mother realized. Marcus, what aren't you telling us? He met her gaze, and she saw a deep sadness there. Sarah isn't just my sister. She's also my commanding officer, and one of the most decorated military leaders in human space. She's devoted her entire life to protecting Earth and our colonies. If she thinks there's even a chance that I've been compromised or turned against humanity. Turn, Admiral Korath demanded. What does that mean? Humans have encountered species before who use advanced psychology, biochemistry, or technology to alter our thinking patterns. Make us loyal to them instead of our own people. Sarah will want to conduct a full psychological evaluation before she believes anything I tell her. The implications were staggering. Lyralii realized that her growing relationship with Marcus, which she had seen as beautiful and natural, might be interpreted by his people as evidence of exactly the kind of manipulation they feared. 6 hours later, 3 human vessels descended through Zephyria's atmosphere like falling meteors. Unlike the graceful, organic curves of Zephyrian ships, the human craft were angular and purposeful, their hulls bearing scars that spoke of battles fought in distant space. They landed in the palace courtyard with mechanical precision. The ramps lowered simultaneously, and armed humans in combat armor emerged in perfect formation. Lyralii was struck by how different they looked from Marcus. Taller, broader, with skin tones ranging from pale white to deep black. But they all shared the same intense, alert expression that she now recognized as fundamentally human. Admiral Sarah was the first to remove her helmet, revealing features similar to Marcus but harder, more weathered. Her dark eyes swept the assembled Zephyrians with professional assessment before settling on her brother. "Marcus," she said, and there was relief in her voice despite her stern expression. "You look well." "I am well, Sarah. These people saved my life." Sarah's gaze shifted to Queen Valestra, then to Lyralii, lingering for a moment longer than protocol might dictate. "Your Majesty, we're grateful for your assistance. If you'll permit us to conduct our standard medical and psychological evaluation of our officer, we can conclude this matter quickly." "Of course," the Queen replied. "Though I must say, your brother has been a model guest. He shared fascinating insights about your people's culture and achievements." Something flickered in Sarah's expression, a wariness that Lyralii didn't like. "Has he indeed? How educational for you all." The evaluation took place in a secure area of the palace, with human medical equipment brought from their ships. Lyralii waited in the corridor outside, pacing with an anxiety that surprised her with its intensity. Marcus had become more important to her than she had fully realized. When the doors finally opened, Sarah emerged alone, her face grim. She approached Lyralii directly, ignoring the protocol that should have directed her to the Queen. "Princess," she said quietly, "I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them honestly. My brother's life may depend on it." Lyralii's wings fluttered nervously. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that will determine whether Marcus leaves this world as a free human being or whether I have to assume he's been compromised and act accordingly." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Lyralii realized that everything she said in the next few minutes would determine not just Marcus's fate, but possibly the future relationship between their species. She thought about everything she had learned about humans, their fierce loyalty, their protective instincts, and their unwillingness to abandon their own. "Ask your questions," she said, straightening her shoulders. "I have nothing to hide." Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "We'll see about that, Princess. We'll see about that." The garden pavilion where Admiral Sarah chose to conduct her questioning seemed an odd choice for an interrogation, but Lyralii quickly understood the strategy. Surrounded by the beauty and serenity that represented the best of Zephyrian culture, any deception would seem particularly stark. The human woman studied the singing flowers with apparent interest, while 2 of her officers took positions at discreet distances. "Beautiful world you have here, Princess," Sarah said, settling onto a stone bench with casual confidence. "Very peaceful. Idyllic even. The kind of place where someone might be tempted to forget where they came from." Lyralii perched on the edge of a nearby fountain, her wings folded tightly against her back. "Your brother told me that humans value directness. Perhaps you should ask what you really want to know." Sarah's smile was predatory. "Fair enough. How long have you been sleeping with my brother?" The bluntness of the question would have offended most Zephyrians, but Lyralii had learned enough about human communication to recognize it as a test. "We haven't been," she replied calmly. Physical intimacy between our species would be complex given our biological differences. But you want to... It wasn't a question. Lyralia met the Admiral's gaze steadily. Yes, I believe the human term is love, though your language lacks the depth to fully express what I feel. Sarah leaned back, studying the princess with new interest. That's an interesting perspective. Most species we've encountered consider human emotions primitive and limited. You're suggesting the opposite. I'm suggesting that humans are far more complex than their physical appearance indicates. Your brother has taught me that adaptation isn't just about biology. It's about the mind's ability to find solutions where none seem to exist. For several minutes, they sat in silence while Sarah processed this response. Around them, the garden hummed with the subtle energy that powered Zephyrian technology. Finally, the Admiral spoke again. Marcus's psychological evaluation shows significant changes in his neural patterns. Specifically, increased activity in areas associated with pair bonding and emotional attachment. Changes that began shortly after his arrival here. Lyralia felt a chill of fear. Is that bad? That depends on whether those changes were natural or induced. Princess, I need you to understand something about humans. We've been manipulated before. Species that seemed benevolent, that offered friendship and alliance, only to reveal they were reshaping our minds for their own purposes. The Centauri Collective was particularly skilled at it. They made us want to serve them, made us believe it was our own choice. The accusation hung in the air between them. Lyralia realized that everything she had shared with Marcus, every moment of connection and growing affection, was now suspect in his sister's eyes. You think I've been manipulating your brother's mind? I think that's the most logical explanation for his current condition. Marcus is one of our most disciplined officers. The idea that he would develop romantic feelings for an alien princess within days of meeting her. Sarah shook her head. It fits the pattern of every psychological manipulation we've encountered. Lyralia stood abruptly, her wings spreading in agitation. Perhaps the problem isn't that your brother has been manipulated. Perhaps the problem is that you can't accept that someone might choose a different path than the one you've planned for them. Sarah's officers tensed at the princess's tone, but the Admiral held up a hand to stop them. Explain. Marcus told me about human families, about the bonds between siblings. But he also told me about choice, about the human belief that individuals should be free to determine their own destiny. Are you here to rescue your brother, Admiral, or to drag him back to a life he may no longer want? The question clearly struck home. For the first time, Sarah's professional mask slipped, revealing the worried sister beneath. Marcus has responsibilities, duties to Earth, and humanity that he can't just abandon for. She gestured vaguely at the garden around them. For love, Lyralia asked quietly. Tell me, Admiral, what makes your duties more important than his happiness? Before Sarah could answer, Marcus appeared at the pavilion entrance. He looked exhausted, his face showing the strain of the psychological evaluation. Sarah, we need to talk. Privately. The Admiral's officers withdrew to a respectful distance, leaving the siblings alone with Lyralia. Marcus sat heavily on the bench beside his sister, running his hands through his hair. The evaluation showed changes, Sarah said without preamble. I know. I felt them happening. Marcus looked at Lyralia, his expression soft despite his fatigue. Sarah, I'm in love with her. Really, truly in love. Not because of manipulation or alien influence, but because she's remarkable in ways that have nothing to do with her species. That's what someone under influence would say. Maybe. But consider this. In all our encounters with truly manipulative species, did we ever meet anyone who challenged us to be better than we were? Who questioned our assumptions and made us think differently about fundamental concepts like strength and adaptation? Sarah frowned. What do you mean? Marcus gestured toward Lyralia. Her people are technologically superior to us in every measurable way. They have natural advantages we lack, longer lifespans, more advanced science. By every metric we use to measure civilization, they should consider us primitive. Instead, Lyralii sees something in humanity that even we sometimes miss. Lyralii spoke for the first time since Marcus's arrival. Your brother's people fascinate me precisely because they lack the advantages my species take for granted. They achieve remarkable things through determination and creativity rather than natural gifts. That kind of strength is rare in the galaxy. Sarah looked between them, her expression troubled. Even if that's true, even if this is genuine, Marcus, you can't just abandon your commission. Earth needs experienced officers, especially now with the colony expansion programs. I'm not abandoning anything, Marcus replied firmly. I'm proposing a different kind of service. Sarah, do you realize what we've stumbled onto here? The Zephyrians are one of the most advanced, peaceful civilizations in this region of space. An alliance with them could change everything for humanity. Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment, her tactical mind clearly working through the implications. An alliance that depends on your romantic relationship with their princess. That's not exactly a stable foundation for interstellar diplomacy, isn't it? Lyralii interjected. Human history, as Marcus has taught it to me, is full of alliances sealed through marriage. Royal houses uniting kingdoms, creating bonds that lasted for generations. Sarah's laugh was sharp and bitter. Those alliances usually ended in betrayal and war, princess. Only when they were purely political arrangements, Marcus said. But this is different. This is based on genuine understanding and respect between our species. Lyralii doesn't see humans as inferior or primitive. She sees us as partners with different strengths. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Queen Valestra, flanked by her royal guard. Her expression was grave as she approached the pavilion. Admiral Chun, I apologize for the interruption, but we've received urgent communications from our border stations. A Krenari war fleet has entered our territory, apparently pursuing your vessels. Sarah was on her feet instantly. How many ships? 67 capital vessels and supporting craft. They're demanding we surrender your people to them immediately. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Sarah, the Krenari don't take prisoners. You know what they do to humans they capture. Admiral Chun was already activating her communicator. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. Implement Omega Protocol immediately. Prepare for emergency departure. Lyralii looked between them in confusion. What's happening? Marcus grabbed her hand. The Krenari are a militaristic species that considers humans to be a threat to galactic stability. They've been hunting our exploration fleets for months, trying to prevent us from making contact with other civilizations. They want to eliminate us before we can build alliances, Sarah added grimly. And now we've led them straight to your doorstep. Queen Valestra's antennae flickered with alarm. Our defense fleet is no match for Krenari warships. If they attack, they won't just attack, Marcus said quietly. They'll sterilize the entire system to make sure no trace of human contact remains. Everyone who met me, everyone who knows about Earth, they'll all die. The peaceful garden suddenly felt like a death trap. Lyralii realized that her growing love for Marcus had inadvertently drawn a nightmare down upon her people. The choice she faced now wasn't about romance or politics. It was about survival itself. There has to be something we can do, she said desperately. Sarah's expression was grim as she studied the tactical data streaming to her communicator. There is, but you're not going to like it. The Royal Command Center had been transformed into a war room within hours. Holographic displays showed the approaching Krenari fleet in terrifying detail. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons that could crack planets, surrounded by clouds of smaller vessels like predatory fish around sharks. Queen Valestra stood at the center of all, her normally serene demeanor replaced by the steely determination of a ruler facing annihilation. Our defense grid can delay them for perhaps an hour, Admiral Korath reported, his voice heavy with the weight of certain defeat. The orbital platforms will buy us some time, but against 67 Krenari capital ships, it would be a slaughter, Sarah Chun finished bluntly. Her 3 ships hung in orbit alongside the Zephyrian defense fleet, looking impossibly small against the approaching armada. My fleet's current position gives us maybe 40 minutes before we're all space dust. Marcus studied the tactical display with the intensity of someone seeking a miracle in mathematics. What about the asteroid belt? Could we use it for cover? Try to split their formation? The Chronari aren't amateurs, Sarah replied. They'll blockade the entire system. No one gets out, and anyone who tries gets vaporized as an example. Lyralii felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. This crisis existed because of her connection to Marcus, because the Chronari saw any human alliance as a threat to their vision of galactic order. There has to be something we can offer them, she said desperately. Some kind of negotiation. The Chronari don't negotiate with humans, Marcus interrupted, his voice bitter. We learned that the hard way at Kepler Station. They consider us a virus that needs to be eliminated before we can spread. Queen Valestra's 4 hands worked at the control interface with practiced efficiency. Then, we make our stand here. Alert all civilian shelters to prepare for siege conditions. Order the outer colonies to evacuate immediately. Your Majesty, Admiral Korath said quietly. Even if some escape the initial assault, the Chronari will hunt down every ship, every station. They won't stop until every Zephyrian who had contact with humans is dead. The stark reality of their situation settled over the room like a shroud. Lyralii watched her mother, a woman who had ruled with wisdom and compassion for over 2 centuries, calculate the cost of her daughter's choices. The mathematics were cruel, but simple. Millions would die because a princess fell in love with an alien. Sarah, Marcus said suddenly, his voice carrying a tone that made his sister look up sharply. What's the range on the fleet's hyperspace communicators? About 15 light years, why? And how long would it take a message to reach the main human fleet? Sarah's eyes narrowed as she followed his logic. 3 days, but Marcus, you can't be thinking. I'm thinking that Earth's 3rd fleet is only 2 weeks away from this sector. Admiral Rodriguez has 45 ships under his command. 45 ships against 67 Chronari dreadnoughts. Lyralii asked. Those aren't good odds. Marcus's smile was grim. You're thinking like a Zephyrian, focused on technological superiority. Humans don't win fights by being stronger or better equipped. We win by being more stubborn than our enemies expect. Sarah was already working on her communicator. I'll send a distress signal, but Marcus, even if Rodriguez breaks every speed record, it'll take him 10 days to get here. We need to survive that long first. Then, we buy time, Queen Valestra declared. Admiral Korath, I want every defensive platform activated, every ship armed and ready. If the Chronari want a war, they'll pay for every kilometer they advance. But even as the orders went out, everyone in the room understood the futility. The Zephyrian military was designed for peacekeeping and exploration, not the kind of total warfare the Chronari specialized in. It would be brave, but ultimately pointless. Lyralii left the command center and made her way to the palace archives, driven by a desperate hope that somewhere in their vast historical records lay a solution. The archives contained 10,000 years of Zephyrian history, including detailed records of every species they had encountered. If there was any weakness in Chronari strategy, any pattern that could be exploited, it would be hidden in these files. She found Marcus there 3 hours later, surrounded by holographic displays showing military engagement from across the galaxy. His face was haggard with exhaustion and concentration. Finding anything useful? She asked, settling beside him. Maybe. Look at this. He gestured to a display showing a battle from 2 centuries ago. The Chronari attacked the Altarian Republic with similar overwhelming force. The Altarians had advanced shields and weapons, but they fought a conventional defensive battle. The Chronari crushed them in 6 hours. That's not encouraging. No, but look at this one. Another display showed a different battle. The Vegan Confederacy faced even worse odds, but they lasted 3 weeks. Want to know the difference? Lyralii studied the tactical data, trying to understand what had changed between the engagements. The vegans didn't try to hold fixed positions. They kept moving, hitting, and running. Exactly. The Chronari are masters of conventional warfare, but they struggle against opponents who refuse to fight conventionally. Their command structure is rigid, hierarchical. They don't adapt well to chaos. A new voice spoke from the entrance to the archives. Chaos is something humans excel at creating. Sarah Chun stood in the doorway, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Marcus, about humans winning through stubbornness rather than superiority. What are you proposing? Lyreli, I asked. Sarah moved to the tactical displays, her experienced eye taking in the strategic situation. The Chronari expect us to run or hide. They expect the Zephyrians to surrender when faced with overwhelming force. What they don't expect is for their prey to turn around and attack them. Marcus stared at his sister. Sarah, you're talking about 3 human ships and maybe 20 Zephyrian vessels against their entire fleet. That's not stubborn. That's suicidal. Is it? Sarah called up her own tactical files. The Chronari fleet formation is designed for intimidation as much as combat effectiveness. Those dreadnoughts are powerful, but they're also huge and slow. If we could get close enough, hit their command ships before they can coordinate a response. Lyreli felt a spark of hope. You're talking about a surgical strike, not a pitched battle. I'm talking about the most insane military operation in human history, Sarah corrected. But insane might be exactly what we need. They worked through the night, refining the plan with input from both human tactical doctrine and Zephyrian technical expertise. The strategy that emerged was audacious to the point of madness. A coordinated assault by human and Zephyrian forces against the heart of the Chronari fleet, timed to hit just as the enemy completed their deployment into attack formation. The key was speed and surprise. Zephyrian ships would use their superior engines to carry human boarding parties directly to the Chronari command vessels. While the enemy was dealing with internal threats, the combined fleet would target critical support ships, disrupting their command structure and creating the chaos that humans thrived in. It's brilliant, Admiral Korath admitted when they presented the plan to the command staff. And completely insane. Even if it works, the casualties will be enormous. Queen Valestra studied the tactical projections with her usual careful attention. How many of our people would return from this assault? Sarah's answer was brutally honest. Maybe 30%. The Chronari will adapt once they understand what we're doing. This is essentially a suicide mission designed to buy time for reinforcements to arrive. The queen looked at her daughter, and Lyreli saw the weight of kingship in her mother's eyes. Daughter, you understand that this plan exists because of your attachment to the human Marcus. Are you prepared to watch our people die for your choices? Lyreli met her mother's gaze steadily. I'm prepared to fight alongside them, mother. If we're going to die, at least let it be while defending something worth preserving. Queen Valestra was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. Very well. Admiral Korath, prepare our fleet for assault operations. Admiral Chun, your people will coordinate the boarding actions. As the military leaders dispersed to implement the desperate plan, Marcus caught Lyreli's arm. Are you sure about this? Once we start this fight, there's no going back. Lyreli looked at the man who had changed her entire understanding of strength and courage. Marcus, your people taught me that some things are worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Love is one of them. Freedom is another. Marcus's smile was sad but proud. Then, we'd better make this count. Because win or lose, the galaxy is about to learn exactly what humans are capable of when someone threatens the people we love. The Chronari fleet was 12 hours away, and time was running out. But for the first time since the crisis began, Lyreli felt something other than despair. It was a feeling she was learning to recognize as distinctly human, the stubborn refusal to surrender, even when victory seemed impossible. The assault began at dawn, when Zephyria's primary sun crested the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. From the palace balcony, the battle looked almost beautiful. Points of light dancing against the star field as human and Zephyrian vessels engaged the Chronari fleet in desperate combat. But Lyralii knew that each flash of light represented lives lost, ships destroyed, dreams ended forever. The boarding operation had been partially successful. Human Marines, carried by Zephyrian fast attack craft, had managed to breach 3 of the enemy command ships before the Chronari adapted their defensive screens. The resulting chaos had disrupted their fleet coordination for precious minutes, allowing the Allied forces to destroy several support vessels and damage 2 dreadnoughts. But it wasn't enough. Even with their initial successes, the mathematics of the engagement remained brutal. 67 Chronari capital ships against 23 human and Zephyrian vessels was mathematics that no amount of courage could overcome. "Princess, you need to see this," Captain Theron called from the command center. Lyralii reluctantly left her vigil and returned to the tactical displays, where Admiral Korath was coordinating what remained of their defense fleet. The holographic projections showed the current battle status in stark detail. 7 Zephyrian ships destroyed, 5 more badly damaged. 2 of Sarah's 3 human vessels were gone, their crews scattered across the void. The Chronari had lost only 8 ships, an exchange rate that would see the Allied fleet completely eliminated within hours. "The Chronari commander is requesting communication," the communications officer reported. "General Vorthak wishes to speak with Queen Valestra." Queen Valestra accepted the connection, and the main display filled with the reptilian features of one of the most feared military leaders in the galaxy. General Vorthak's scaled face showed no emotion as he surveyed the assembled Zephyrian leadership. "Queen Valestra," he said in accented galactic standard, "you have fought bravely, but futilely. Surrender now, and I will limit the executions to those who had direct contact with the human contamination. Continue this resistance, and I will be forced to sterilize your entire system." The Queen's antennae flickered with barely controlled rage. "General, the Zephyrian Kingdom has committed no crime except offering sanctuary to a stranded traveler. Your actions here violate every principle of interstellar law." Vorthak's laugh was cold and harsh. "Law is written by the victorious, Your Majesty. The humans are a disease that threatens galactic stability. They spread their chaotic philosophies wherever they go, corrupting established order with their primitive notions of individual freedom and emotional attachment." Lyralii stepped forward before anyone could stop her. "You're afraid of them," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the communication channel. The general's reptilian eyes focused on her with predatory intensity. "And you are the princess who has been compromised by human influence. You prove my point perfectly. Their very presence warps rational thought." "No," Lyralii replied, feeling a strange calm settle over her. "I think you're afraid because the humans represent something the Chronari Empire can't control or understand. They achieve remarkable things without the rigid hierarchies and technological advantages that your species depends on. They make alliances based on mutual respect rather than fear and dominance." Vorthak's expression darkened. "Foolish child, your romantic delusions will not save your people from the consequences of their choices." The communication channel closed, leaving the command center in tense silence. Queen Valestra looked at her daughter with something like pride mixed with sorrow. "Brave words, but they won't stop Chronari dreadnoughts." "Maybe not," Lyralii admitted. "But Marcus taught me that sometimes the gesture matters more than the outcome. Sometimes you fight because fighting is right, even when winning is impossible." Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by urgent alerts from the sensor stations. Something was happening at the edge of the system. Massive hyperspace signatures appearing in numbers that made everyone freeze in shock. 47 ships dropping out of hyperspace, the sensor officer reported, his voice tight with disbelief. "Configuration matches Earth's third fleet. Admiral Rodriguez has arrived 3 days early." The tactical display shifted to show the new arrivals, and Lyralii felt her heart leap with desperate hope. The human reinforcements were impressive: sleek destroyers, heavy cruisers, and massive battleships that matched the Chronari dreadnoughts in size, if not quite in firepower. How'd they get here so fast? Admiral Korath asked. Sarah Chun, monitoring the situation from her damaged flagship, provided the answer through the communication channel. Rodriguez pushed his ships past safety limits, burned out half their hyperspace generators getting here. Those ships won't be jumping anywhere for weeks, but they're here now. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through the speakers, carrying the flat authority of someone accustomed to impossible situations. General Vorthak, this is Admiral Rodriguez of the Terran Third Fleet. You are in violation of several interstellar treaties by attacking a neutral system. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. Vorthak's response was predictably dismissive. Admiral, you are outnumbered and outgunned. 47 ships against 67 is still mathematics that favors the Chronari Empire. General, you're thinking like a Chronari, Rodriguez replied, and there was something like amusement in his voice. You see numbers and assume they tell the whole story. But humans learned long ago that wars aren't won by mathematics alone. As if his words were a signal, the human fleet dispersed into attack formations that defied conventional tactical doctrine. Instead of forming defensive lines or preparing for a traditional engagement, the Earth's ships scattered into seemingly random patterns that made targeting difficult. What are they doing? Lyralii asked, studying the holographic display in confusion. Marcus, who had joined them in the command center, smiled grimly. They're fighting like humans. Rodriguez isn't trying to match the Chronari ship for ship. He's turning this into the kind of chaotic, unpredictable engagement that human crews excel at. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Zephyrian military history. The human ships moved in coordinated swarms, striking at Chronari vessels from multiple angles before disappearing into the asteroid belt or behind planetary bodies. They used the system's natural features as weapons, herding enemy ships into gravitational wells or trapping them between orbital platforms. Most importantly, they fought with a ferocity that seemed to defy logic. Human vessels that should have withdrawn when damaged instead pressed their attacks, ramming Chronari ships or exploding their own reactors to damage nearby enemies. It was a kind of warfare that prioritized inflicting damage over self-preservation. They're not trying to win a traditional battle, Admiral Korath observed with growing understanding. They're trying to make the cost of victory unacceptable to the Chronari. The tide of battle shifted gradually, but inexorably. For every human ship destroyed, 2 or 3 Chronari vessels were eliminated or crippled. The rigid Chronari command structure struggled to adapt to the chaotic nature of human tactics, while Earth's crews seemed to thrive in the confusion they had created. General Vorthak's face reappeared on the communication screen 6 hours into the engagement, his reptilian features showing strain for the first time. Admiral Rodriguez, your losses are approaching 60%. This is madness. General, you're right, Rodriguez replied calmly. We've lost 30 ships and most of their crews. But you've lost 43 vessels, including 5 command dreadnoughts. At this rate of exchange, we'll both be eliminated within the hour. That proves my point. Neither of U.S. can achieve victory at this cost. Rodriguez's smile was sharp as a blade. Who said anything about victory, General? We came here to make sure you couldn't complete your mission. Mission accomplished. The strategic implications hit everyone simultaneously. The human fleet hadn't come to win. They had come to ensure that the Chronari couldn't achieve their objective of eliminating everyone who had contact with Earth. It was a kind of tactical thinking that prioritized larger goals over immediate survival. Vorthak's expression showed the reptilian equivalent of frustration. You would sacrifice your entire fleet for a handful of aliens you barely know? General, that's what makes us human, Rodriguez replied. We don't abandon our allies, and we don't let bullies have their way just because they're bigger than we are. The communication channel filled with urgent reports from Chronari vessels, damaged ships, depleted crews, command structures, and chaos. Lyralii realized that the humans had achieved something remarkable. They had made victory so costly that even the militaristic Chronari were reconsidering their objectives. Finally, General Vorthak spoke again, his voice heavy with reluctant respect. Admiral Rodriguez, I propose a ceasefire. My fleet will withdraw from this system if you guarantee that no human vessels will use Zephyrian space to threaten Chronari territory. Counter-proposal, Rodriguez replied immediately. Your fleet withdraws, and we establish this system as neutral territory under joint human-Zephyrian protection. Anyone who wants to attack either of our peoples will have to go through both of us. The negotiation that followed was conducted while damaged ships from both sides limped towards safe harbors. In the end, the agreement reached was simple but profound. The Zephyrian Kingdom and the Terran Federation would form a mutual defense alliance, with Earth providing military expertise and Zephyria offering advanced technology. 3 days later, Lyralii stood in the same garden pavilion where Admiral Sarachan had questioned her, but the atmosphere was completely different. The threat had passed, the alliance was formalized, and the galaxy had learned that humanity could not be easily eliminated or intimidated. Queen Valestra approached through the singing flowers, her expression thoughtful as she surveyed the aftermath of their crisis. The battle had cost them dearly. Hundreds of Zephyrian military personnel had died, and entire orbital installations would need to be rebuilt. But they had survived, and in surviving, they had found something unexpected. Mother, Lyralii said as the queen joined her, I know my choices led to this conflict. I'm prepared to accept responsibility for the consequences. Queen Valestra was quiet for a moment, listening to the melodic hums of the flowers that had somehow continued blooming despite the chaos that had engulfed their world. Daughter, do you remember what I asked you when this crisis began? You asked if I was prepared to watch our people die for my choices. And your answer was that you were prepared to fight alongside them. The queen smiled, and there was pride in her expression. You kept that promise. When the assault began, you could have hidden in the palace shelters. Instead, you worked in the command center, coordinated relief efforts, and helped save lives. Lyralii looked toward the palace, where Marcus was meeting with Admiral Rodriguez and other human officials to plan the new alliance's structure. I'm still responsible for bringing this crisis to our doorstep. Are you? Queen Valestra asked. Or are you responsible for introducing us to allies who were willing to sacrifice everything to protect people they had just met? The humans lost 30 ships and thousands of crew members defending our world. That kind of loyalty is rare in the galaxy. As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus appeared at the pavilion entrance. He looked tired but happy, his face showing the relief of someone who had expected to die, but found himself alive and among friends. Your Majesty, he said, bowing respectfully to Queen Valestra. The alliance negotiations are progressing well. Admiral Rodriguez believes we can have formal treaties signed within the week. Queen Valestra studied the young human who had changed their world so dramatically. Marcus, I have a question that's been troubling me since this crisis began. Of course, Your Majesty. The Queen's gaze shifted between Marcus and her daughter, her expression becoming formal and serious. Who is this human? She demanded, her voice carrying the full authority of royal command. Lyralii felt her breath catch, understanding instinctively that this was a crucial moment. The Queen wasn't asking for information. She was asking for a declaration, a choice that would determine not just personal relationships, but the future direction of their alliance with humanity. Looking directly at her mother, Lyralii replied with calm certainty, He's my spouse. The word hung in the air between them, carrying implications that stretched far beyond romance. In Zephyrian culture, declaring someone as a spouse wasn't just an emotional commitment. It was a legal and political statement that created bonds between families, houses, and even kingdoms. Queen Valestra nodded slowly, as if she had expected this answer. And are you prepared for what that means? For the responsibilities it entails? I am, Lyralii replied firmly. We both are. Marcus stepped forward, his expression serious as he understood the gravity of the moment. "Your Majesty, I know I'm not what you envisioned for your daughter. I'm an alien from a primitive species with no title, no wealth, no political connections. But I love Lyralii more than my own life, and I swear to you that I will spend every day proving worthy of the trust you're placing in me." Queen Valestra was quiet for a long moment, studying them both with the calculating gaze of someone who had ruled wisely for centuries. Finally, she smiled, an expression that transformed her entire face and made her look more like a mother than a monarch. "Then, let us plan a wedding," she said simply. "After all, if we're going to formalize an alliance between our species, we might as well do it properly." The garden erupted in celebration as the news spread throughout the palace. Singing flowers seemed to hum more loudly, as if nature itself approved of the union. Lyralii felt a joy so complete that it seemed to lift her off the ground, making her wings flutter with pure happiness. Marcus took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Are you sure about this? Marriage to me means you'll be tied to humanity's fate, whatever that might be." Lyralii looked up at the sky, where human and Zephyrian ships flew in formation, former enemies now working together to rebuild what war had damaged. "Marcus, your people taught me that strength isn't about having natural advantages or superior technology. Real strength is about choosing to do what's right, even when it's difficult or dangerous." She turned to face him, seeing the love and respect in his eyes that had first drawn her to him. "I'm choosing you, choosing us, choosing the future we can build together. That's not just strength, it's hope." As they embraced in the garden where they had first shared their feelings, Lyralii realized that their story was just beginning. The alliance between Earth and Zephyria would face many challenges in the years to come, and their marriage would be both symbol and foundation for something unprecedented in galactic history. But for now, in this moment of peace and possibility, she was content to hold the hand of a remarkable human who had taught her people that true strength came not from what you were born with, but from what you chose to become. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but Lyralii had found the greatest wonder of all, a love that could bridge not just the space between worlds, but the differences between species, cultures, and ways of thinking. It was a very human kind of miracle, and she treasured it accordingly.